It is a doomsday that is foretold in the Mayan calendar, the Chinese oracle of the I Ching, even an internet-based prophetic software program. 2012. A date that is prophesied as the end of the world. But is there any science behind this dire prediction? Could ancient oracles truly predict the future? The answer could affect us all, because history shows a surprisingly good track record for those who say doomsday is almost here. There are wars and rumors of war, signs and warnings. There are disasters, destruction. There are those who say that these are dark times and that these destructive events are not just random.
So if you turn on Fox or CNN News, you're constantly seeing possibilities of terrorism, nuclear attack, plagues of new diseases. We seem to be going through sort of apocalyptic process.
These days were prophesied long ago in the pages of the Bible, the temples of ancient Rome, the pyramids of the ancient Maya, even the World Wide Web.
We have a number of prophecies that all seem to imply that something is going to happen in the 21st century.
It ties into a number of prophecies made in the Old Testament, these warnings of coming judgment, of a coming doomsday because people are not following the rules of the law.
More than one oracle in history points to a single date, a disastrous convergence not far in the future.
The Mayans talked about December 21st, 2012 as being the end of this cycle.
The ancient Mayans of Central America created a calendar so precise that it could predict lunar eclipses literally thousands of years in the future. Yet the Mayan calendar mysteriously ends on one date, the winter solstice in the year 2012.
Is the world going to end in 2012, or is there going to be some kind of major shift in the cycles of history? That remains an open question.
And the newest version of the 2012 Doomsday Prophecy comes from an oracle that isn't even human. Its inventors call it the WebBot Project. It began in the late 1990s as a program to predict possible stock futures.
Anytime anybody makes an investment, they're at the same time making a prediction about the future.
Business consultant George Yore worked with partners and developed a program that uses independent mini-programs called spiders, or agents, to comb the internet for hints of future financial news. The concept behind the webbots is that massive scans of language will reveal a direct connection to the collective unconscious and a hint of the future.
It's almost a window into the universal subconscious mind.
However it works, the WebBot's track record is impressive.
August 2004, we made a prediction about earthquakes. We predicted 300,000 dead, the water rising, which turned out to be the tsunami in December of 2004.
The WebBots also foretold the anthrax attacks in Washington, D.C. in 2001, the massive East Coast power outage of 2003, the destruction of Hurricane Katrina in 2005. But it's the WebBots' prophecies for the future that are most disturbing.
If the WebBots are correct, we should see a series of escalations leading to, I don't like to say it, but something like limited nuclear war in 2008, 2009 kind of time frame.
According to the WebBots, a series of catastrophes reaches its peak in the year 2012.
I honestly don't know what's going to happen in 2012. This technology may start meshing with a lot of the other predictive things out there, like Mayan calendar.
Is it true prophecy, or just a lot of random noise? For answers, one must return to the very beginnings of Western civilization. In the ancient world, the most highly regarded psychics were called oracles.
An oracle is an individual who has some kind of prophetic connection with a god or God himself.
One of the most important oracles of the ancient world was based in the Roman Empire. She was called the Sibyl. She lived in a cave in Cumae, near modern-day Naples, around the 6th century BC.
Statesmen, aristocrats, figures from the upper echelon of Roman society would go and consult the Sibylline prophecies about all kinds of things, ranging from war to statecraft to domestic concerns.
Before giving her prophecies, the Sibyl would go into a trance in which it was said the god Apollo would take over her body.
The god possessed the Sibyl. She made utterances, often in this furious, altered state. One of the remarkable things about the Sibyl is that she wrote her pronouncements on oak leaves. But if the oak leaves blew in the wind, they were not reassembled, so the messages were often scrambled.
The Sibyl's prophecies were collected in a series of scrolls and housed in the Temple of Jupiter. They were considered the most important religious books of ancient Rome. Among the Sibyl's prophecies was a distant apocalypse. She predicted the world would last for 9 periods of 800 years each. The 10th generation would begin approximately 2000 AD, and it would be the last.
These things in the 10th generation shall come to pass. The earth shall be shaken by a great earthquake that throws many cities into the sea. There shall be war. Fire shall come flashing forth from the heavens, and many cities burn. Black ashes shall fill the great sky. Then know the anger of the gods. The Sibylline Oracles, Book 4.
We're feeling this time coming on. We're reading the reports about, the glaciers melting. We're experiencing things like the tsunamis, climate changes, upheavals in land, cataclysms.
But the Sibyl's prophecies wouldn't mean much if she didn't have such a good track record. In the 6th century BC, the Sibyl predicted the invasion of Italy by Hannibal 700 years before it happened. And she predicted his ultimate defeat. She predicted the rise of the Emperor Constantine by name 800 years before he was born. But her greatest prophecy gave her a place of honor among early Christians.
In Virgil's 4th Eclogue, he has the Sibyl give a prophecy of a new age coming, a new golden age, and a child who would be born who would initiate this golden age. This was written, I believe, say around 20 BC. Later on, Christians took this as a prophecy of Christ.
The Sibyl's prophecy of the coming of Jesus, 20 years before his birth, caused her to be revered by early Christians. And even Michelangelo gave her a prominent place in the Sistine Chapel. No one knows how the Sibyl saw into the future, but a new archaeological discovery suggests that the source of her prophecy was not God, but gas. The evidence comes from another oracle of the ancient world, this one at Delphi, Greece.
The most famous of all of the oracles was the oracle at Delphi. At Delphi, it is thought that the god Apollo could inspire a person who could be a priestess of Apollo to foresee the future.
Delphi is a small village about 100 miles from modern-day Athens. From the 8th century BC to the 4th century AD, pilgrims traveled there from throughout the Mediterranean to pose questions to the priestesses of Apollo. The priestess entered an underground chamber and there went into a trance. In this trance, She would give prophecies that were evocative, intriguing, and often surprisingly accurate.
She was in an altered state. Occasionally she's described as chewing laurel leaves, and people have commented that this may have had a psychotropic effect.
There is other evidence of psychotropic effects. In 1998, a geological team discovered 2 fault lines running under the temple at Delphi, which led to underground stores of ethylene gas. In small quantities, ethylene produces a mild euphoria and is the key ingredient in the dangerous practice of glue sniffing. In large quantities, the gas is a powerful hallucinogen that produces visions and sometimes incoherent raving. This ambiguity may be the key to the oracle's success.
The basic principle of a good prophet or a good oracle is keep it vague. Allow for a variety of different futures to be taken as fulfillment of prophecy. And the poetry that came from the oracle at Delphi was very much like that. It was often rather vague and was open to interpretation.
Like Delphi, the cave of the Sibyl was also underground, connected to volcanic gases and fault lines.
If you ingest hallucinogens, the brain interprets that as something external to itself, even though we know, of course, it's internal. But that only adds to the mystery and the overall sense of something special going on.
Yet the fact remains that the Delphic oracles seem to accurately and specifically predict the fame of Socrates, years before he was known, the defeat of the Persian invasion of Greece in 480 BC, and Alexander the Great's conquest of the known world.
Ancient man had a very, very sophisticated mindset, and I think it represents an inconsistency on our part to embrace his rationalism, his historiography, his engineering, to embrace all these things and yet to make no room whatsoever for ancient man's interest in prophecy and oracles.
The accuracy of these ancient oracles is not just a moot point, because these doomsday prophecies apparently referred to our own time. And some find disturbing confirmation of the 2012 doomsday in the calendar of the ancient Mayans, which gives a far more specific timetable for apocalypse, including the year, the month, and the day. The Mayan calendar seems to say that the world will end in 2012. It's a startlingly precise prediction from a culture that took its calendar very seriously. The Mayan civilization flourished in Central America from the 6th to the 9th century AD. They were obsessed with timekeeping. Their calendar was incredibly precise, more accurate even than our own. Its interlocking timescales of lunar, solar, and planetary cycles could accurately predict a solar eclipse thousands of years into the future.
The Mayans were kind of like shamanic scientists, and they were obsessed with time, synchronicity, and consciousness, and they spent like 1,000 years, going back to even previous civilizations, trying to put together a model of when this big transformation was going to take place.
The calendar is also prophetic. In the 8th century AD, it predicted that white-skinned, bearded gods would arrive from across the sea on March 5th, 1519. On that precise date, Cortez and his conquistadors arrived in the New World. Was it coincidence, or was the calendar prophetically accurate? The answer matters, for the Mayan calendar also predicts the end of the world as we know it, on the date that the Mayans called Hunab Ku.
On the winter solstice, 2012, December 21st, the sun rises within the dark rift at the center of the Milky Way. And they call this dark rift a cosmic mother, or they're also apparently referred to it as a black hole. And only in the last 5 years have Western astronomers discovered that there is actually an enormous black hole at the center of the Milky Way, which is at the center of our galaxy.
Modern astronomers concur with the ancient Mayans. On December 21st, 2012, the Earth will be in exact alignment with the Sun and the center of the Milky Way galaxy. A galactic event that takes place only once every 25,800 years. No one knows what effect this extraordinary alignment will have on the Earth, but the Mayans believed it would be dire.
It might be kind of like a crossing over of the kind of galactic equator. When you go below, south and north, magnetic currents will spin in opposite directions. It might be there's a kind of field effect reversal that takes place once you pass through this galactic equator.
Geophysicists have a theory that is strikingly similar to the events predicted by the Mayan alignment. This phenomenon is called pole shift, in which the entire mantle of the Earth would shift in a matter of days, perhaps hours, changing the position of the North and South Pole, causing worldwide disaster. Earthquakes would rock every continent. Massive tsunamis would inundate coastal cities. It would be the ultimate planetary catastrophe. As unlikely as this theory seems, it is backed by science. Albert Einstein first suggested it in 1955. And a new study from Princeton University reveals that the poles have shifted before. The North Pole rested in the middle of the Pacific 800 million years ago, placing Alaska at the equator. Even if this pole shift took place slowly over years, it would result in global climate change and shifting sea levels. If it took place rapidly, it would mean planet-wide disaster and mass extinction of species. On the other side of the world, the 2012 date also emerges in prophecy. According to one theory, the identical doomsday date can be found in China's oldest text, the I Ching, or Book of Changes.
The I Ching is the most remarkable, most enduring oracle in existence. Its origins are shrouded in mystery. It is quite possible that the earliest vestiges of the I Ching are approximately 5,000 years old.
Chinese legend says the Emperor Fu Xi invented the I Ching around 2800 BC, a century before the pyramids were built in Egypt. The I Ching is usually used for personal fortune-telling. You ask a question of the text, then you toss 3 coins. If they are mostly tails, you draw a straight line. If they are mostly heads, you draw a broken line. This is repeated 6 times until the questioner has a series of 6 straight and broken lines called a hexagram.
There's 64 possible combinations, and there are little texts appended to each of these hexagrams, and that gives you some reading on the future.
The questioner looks up his hexagram in an index and finds a prophecy.
The remarkable thing about the I Ching is that if you pose a question to this oracle, you will discover that you receive an answer that is astoundingly appropriate to the question being asked.
Advice can range from relationships to travel to career guidance. But scientific rationalists counter that the evocative language of the I Ching only makes it seem accurate.
Sometimes this is called the P.T. Barnum effect, where you provide something for everybody. So it's a vague general statement. I see you as somebody who is outgoing and extroverted, yet at times you can be introverted. It's total nonsense. There's nothing psychic going on at all.
Despite the opinion of skeptics, the 5,000-year-old I Ching remains a bestseller. Used by fortune tellers, psychotherapists, and Shanghai business tycoons. But only in the past decades has the ancient I Ching become an oracle of doom. The story begins with a controversial researcher named Terence McKenna.
Terence McKenna was kind of the subcultural Timothy Leary of the 1980s and 90s. He did these kind of mathematical graphings with the I Ching and turned it into a kind of map of time.
Before his death in 2000, McKenna noticed an unrecognized pattern in the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. The 6 lines and 64 possible combinations can be expressed as a ratio of change in each hexagram and plotted on a graph. When McKenna mapped that graph over a timeline, he found intriguing correlations that matched all 4,000 years of recorded history. His graph starts with the I Ching's creation in China's Shang dynasty, the same period as the dawn of civilization in other parts of the world. The 64 hexagrams repeat 64 times over history. McKenna called his theory time wave zero. The highs and lows of his I Ching graph seem to have accurately predicted the fall of the Roman Empire, the discovery of the New World, and the world wars of the 20th century. But the strangest thing of all was that McKenna's timeline came to an end on one specific date, December 21st, 2012.
It was later that McKenna discovered that the Mayan civilization ended its calendar at the point of 2012. He felt there was something truly prophetic about that date.
Did the I Ching from ancient China and the Mayan calendar from medieval Mexico independently arrive at the same date for Doomsday?
What I feel is particularly remarkable about the current time is that we have a number of prophecies that all seem to imply that something is going to happen in the 21st century. The time scale of some of the traditional South American prophecies is the same as the time scale of the medieval Welsh prophecies of Merlin.
The wizard Merlin, best known from tales of King Arthur. But that was the Merlin of fiction. The real Merlin was much darker, with prophecies that foretold the end of the world.